Hey, everybody, and welcome to a brief response for our latest lesson, Moses and Pharaoh. I want to say thank you again for some very thoughtful responses to the lesson that we went through. The thoughts that you shared were really, really great. I appreciated hearing your opinions and what you thought about this whole deal. Now, this was, of course, a very long chunk of scripture of the book of Exodus that we covered with Moses and his early life, and then the encounter with Pharaoh through Egypt as God tries to free the people, and the 10 plagues, and all of that. There was a lot in there, and admittedly, we covered a whole bunch. So thanks for sticking with me in what was a pretty long video the last time around. Um, as we continue to move through the ongoing narration or narrative of the Bible, both the Old Testament as well as into the New Testament, we're going to see a lot of different ways that the brokenness of humanity and the brokenness of the world begins to manifest in the ways that the different people encounter one another, and in the ways they interact with God, and the way God interacts with them, and all of this stuff. We're going to kind of continue to see this same pattern over and over again. Now, one of the questions that we asked as we were talking about this whole deal this time around was, have you seen this sort of thing before, where God brings something good out of hardship and suffering and pain and even death? And you did pick up on that. One of you talked about Noah and the flood. That's a great example. Another one talked about Joseph and both his personal experience in Egypt, and even before Egypt, when he was sold by his brothers and became a slave, and then kind of rose up, and then he became a prisoner, and then rose up, and then he ended up rising up in Egypt as well. But then also the famine that affected the entire world, that would bring Joseph's family down to Egypt to bring them there in the first place. So we've kind of seen this pattern, and again, we'll continue to see this type of thing. Now, the story of the 10 plagues and Exodus and all of this, it's a troublesome uh, story, to be sure. And you all kind of talked about some of these things of, boy, that's kind of hard to think about. Like the way that Pharaoh manipulates Moses to be like, hey, if you pray to take this plague away, then I'll let your people go. And then he's like, oh no, by the way, I'm not going to. That, and then also the suffering, and then even the death of like the livestock or some of the people. Were the people innocent in this? The Egyptian people, were they guilty? There's a lot of ambiguity. There's a lot of troublesome stuff in there. So you were okay to pick up on that stuff and to even question it. Like, boy, is this good news? Is it not good news? I'm not really sure. It kind of probably depends on who you're talking to. Like, the Egyptians probably didn't think this was very good news. The Israelites, maybe they did think it was good news. We're somewhere in the middle of like, well, where do we fall? I don't really know. But so we asked the question, then, what is revealed about this whole thing? And I can't tell you what to think, but I can only tell you how I think about it when I look at the book of Exodus, and when I look at this story of what is God doing. And it seems to me that God is revealing that God sides with those who have been pushed to the margins, those who have been taken advantage of, those who have been stepped on by by others who have power or authority or might or whatever. That we have a God who will be found with those who have been pushed to the margins, and to me, that is good news. It doesn't always show up in ways that maybe seem great. Like, I think about the Egyptians too, and think, oh man, maybe some of them kind of got a raw deal out of this whole deal. But God is found with the marginalized. Um, and I think that's maybe the takeaway from this particular story. Now, one question did come up. It was a great question. I'm glad you picked up on it. Wasn't Pharaoh the firstborn? So shouldn't he have died in the 10th plague of the death of the firstborn? He probably was the firstborn of his father, but not necessarily. We don't necessarily know if he would have been or not. But that's a great point, and a great question that you picked up on. I'm glad you're thinking along those lines. The thing to remember about this also too is that this is not a history book. This is a story that was passed down from generation to generation to generation to generation to generation before it was finally recorded, as a way to illustrate these truths about a God who will be found with those pushed to the margins. So great question. and and we don't really know. So we'll go with that. But I'm glad you're thinking along those lines. Little preview. This week we're going to fast forward, but really not very far. We're going to look at the wilderness wanderings, the 40 years that the Israelites spent wandering in the wilderness after leaving Egypt before getting established in the Promised Land. So look for that here towards the end of the week. Looking forward to another week with you. Thanks, everybody.